Right now, there is a species of insect that can only survive in one place. Inside worn clothing. Not on skin, never on skin. It needs cloth to live, cloth to hide in, cloth to breed in. Which means somewhere there was a first moment that species could exist at all. And scientists used that exact moment to answer a question archaeology alone could never nail down. When did humans actually start wearing clothes? Stick with the bug part, it gets stranger before it gets clear. But first, rewind, roughly 170,000 years ago. You are human, barely, but technically yes. You wake up on the open grass, stretch, and look around. And at no point does the thought cross your mind, this morning is missing pants. And yet here you are, however many thousands of years later, putting on clothes every single morning without question. We even have laws about it. The state will step in if you are too undressed in public. An entire legal system built around please put something on. So when did this start, and why did humans do it when almost nothing else on Earth bothers to? Dogs do not wear clothes, wolves do not. An elephant, genuinely one of the smartest animals alive, has never once thought it needed a jacket. The short answer is nobody knows the exact day. The long answer is much stranger, and it starts with lice. Which, fair warning, is exactly as gross as it sounds. But it is also one of the strangest, most brilliant pieces of detective work in all of science. Let's start with something nobody really stops to notice. Humans are nearly the only large mammal on the planet that is almost hairless. Gorillas are covered, chimpanzees are covered. Bears, lions, wolves, horses, elephants, every one of them is wrapped in a full coat in every climate on Earth. And then there is us, standing in the middle of all that fur just smooth. The leading theory for why we lost our fur is called thermoregulation. As our ancestors moved onto open grassland and started chasing prey across long distances, thick fur became dangerous. You would overheat, your body would spike, and you would collapse before you ever caught the thing you were chasing. So, over hundreds of thousands of years, the fur went, and something else took its place. An almost absurd number of sweat glands. Humans have between 2 and 4 million of them, more than nearly any other animal alive. We are, without exaggeration, elite sweating machines. Fantastic in the heat, considerably less fantastic at 40 below zero with nothing but your bare skin. And that is where clothes are supposed to come in. Cold weather, animal skins, problem solved, case closed. Except the timeline does not actually work, and once you notice that, the tidy story falls apart. Genetic evidence points to humans wearing clothes somewhere between 100,000 and 170,000 years ago. But humans did not migrate out of Africa in real numbers until around 70,000 years ago. So clothing shows up tens of thousands of years before anyone actually needed it for cold. Something else was going on, something that has almost nothing to do with the weather. And this is where the lice come back in. We are doing the lice now. Researchers at the University of Florida mapped the entire evolutionary history of human lice. Here is the part you need to understand. Humans carry 2 genetically distinct kinds of lice. Head lice live in your hair. Body lice live specifically in clothing, in the seams, in the folds, in the fabric itself. And here is the crucial fact. Body lice physically cannot survive on bare human skin. They need fabric, the warmth of it, the shelter of it, the folds of it. Without cloth, they simply die. Which means the exact moment body lice split off from head lice, genetically, is the exact moment clothing became a permanent part of human life. A brand new habitat opened up for a parasite, and the parasite moved in and never left. When researchers ran the genetic clock, the split landed somewhere between 83,000 and 170,000 years ago. Let that sit for a second. A parasite, one of the most hated creatures in human history, the thing that causes panic in every elementary school, accidentally preserved the earliest known evidence of human fashion. The lice knew we got dressed before we did. They were there, they adapted, they moved in. And somewhere out there today, there is a descendant of that very same species, still doing exactly what its ancestor did. Living in worn fabric, possibly statistically, somewhere very close to you right now. That is either beautiful or deeply horrifying. Honestly, probably both. So if it was not the cold, what actually got humans dressed in the first place? Theory number 1, basic physical protection. Not from cold, but from sun, thorns, biting insects, and the general abrasion of walking through rough terrain all day. A simple wrap made from hide creates a real barrier between your skin and everything trying to scratch, bite, or burn it. Not glamorous, not philosophically deep, but it kept people out of infections from small cuts and wounds. Sometimes the boring answer really is the correct one. Theory number 2 is where it gets genuinely interesting: social signaling. Humans are at the core obsessively social animals. We are constantly, compulsively communicating who we are, what group we belong to, and what status we hold. We do it with posture, with facial expressions, with hairstyles, with tattoos. And it turns out, quite possibly with what we drape over our bodies, far earlier than anyone expected. There is evidence humans were using red ochre pigment to paint their bodies as far back as 200,000 years ago. That is even older than the lice evidence for clothing. Which means the urge to decorate the body, to say something visual about yourself, may be older than clothing itself. We were painting ourselves before we were dressing ourselves. And the jump from painted skin to a particular hide worn a particular way is not a big cognitive leap at all. Once the hide is on, you start thinking, which hide, whose kill was this, what does wearing it say about me? Welcome to the very first fashion industry. Population, a small band of humans on the savannah arguing over who gets the good hide. For a very long time, clothing stayed rough, a skin draped over the shoulder, tied with a twisted cord. Functional, ungainly, the prehistoric version of wearing a garbage bag. But then, around 50,000 years ago, something changes in the archaeological record. Researchers start finding bone needles, not just sharp points, actual needles with tiny eyes bored straight through them. Designed for one purpose: threading sinew or fiber and stitching material together with real precision. This meant fitted clothing, sewn seams, garments actually shaped to the body, not just thrown over it. The oldest confirmed eyed needle was found in Denisova Cave in Siberia, dated to roughly 50,000 years ago. Carved from the hollow bone of a bird, polished to a fineness that is genuinely remarkable for its time. This is not just a survival instinct, this is engineering. Someone imagined a tool that did not exist yet and built it from a sliver of bone. You can live without pottery, you can live without cave paintings. In Siberia 50,000 years ago, in the middle of a glacial winter, without properly fitted clothing, you cannot. And it was not only us. Neanderthals were doing this too, well before they ever met modern humans. We have found evidence of Neanderthals systematically scraping and preparing animal hides with specialized stone tools. Their bodies show cold climate adaptations, stockier builds, shorter limbs, different fat distribution. Clothing was not optional for them, it was essential. And then there are the Denisovans, a mysterious third human lineage discovered from a single finger bone in that very same Siberian cave. In the same layer as the needle, researchers found pierced and polished ornaments, suggesting decoration, maybe even garment embellishment. A people we barely knew existed were already thinking about how their clothes looked. Multiple human species in different environments arrived at the same solution. Which raises a strange question: is clothing a human thing or just an inevitable thing for any smart, cold, social creature? Nobody knows for certain, but the convergence is very hard to dismiss. And here is the truly strange thing that separates human clothing from anything else in the animal kingdom. If clothing were purely practical, every culture would land on the single most efficient design for its climate and just stay there. Thick hides in the Arctic, light fibers in the tropics, same shapes forever, total standardization. That is categorically not what happened. Instead, humans immediately made clothing mean something. Priests wore different things than warriors. Rulers wore things nobody else was allowed to wear. The dead were buried in specific garments, suited to their status and the journey ahead of them. Some of the oldest textile fragments ever found were not just plain fabric. They were dyed in multiple colors. Someone tens of thousands of years ago looked at a perfectly functional piece of cloth and thought, this needs to be a different color. Not to stay warmer, to say something. This is the strange, distinctly human thing. We turned clothing into a language. We use it to say, I belong to this group, I hold this rank, I am mourning, I am celebrating, I am sacred. No other animal does this. Peacocks display, sure, but they are not choosing what to communicate. For us, it is entirely intentional, entirely ours. But even while clothing was becoming a language, the climate was about to make it something far more urgent. Between roughly 120,000 and 70,000 years ago, Earth went through brutal glacial cycles. Global temperatures plunged, ice sheets expanded, vast stretches of Africa turned bone dry. Lakes disappeared, food sources collapsed. And the human population may have crashed to somewhere between 10 and 30,000 people at its lowest point. We nearly went extinct. We came astonishingly close to simply not existing as a species before we had even properly gotten started. For the survivors, especially the groups pushing north into colder land, clothing was no longer a social signal or a comfort. It was the thin line between living and not living, quite literally. The groups who had already mastered fitted, layered, stitched clothing had an advantage that is hard to overstate. A properly built garment traps warm air against the body and protects the wrists and neck where heat escapes fastest. It lets a human body survive temperatures that would kill an unclothed person in hours. Those with the needle, the thread, the knowledge of layering hide made it through. They had children. Those children learned the same skills. Those skills carried every generation after them across every continent. Which means somewhere in that freezing bottleneck, your own ancestors were among the ones who survived. Because of a needle, a scrap of hide, and someone who figured out how to stitch the two together. We did not just evolve bodies suited for the world. We built a second skin and carried it everywhere we went. There is one more shift worth knowing, the move from animal hides to woven plant fiber. Hides are warm and durable, but heavy, stiff, and you need to kill something to get one. So humans started spinning plant fibers into thread and twisting thread into cord and cord into fabric. The oldest known twisted plant fiber was found in a cave in the country of Georgia, dated to roughly 30,000 years ago. And it was already dyed in multiple colors, already decorative, already saying something. By around 10,000 BCE, textiles had become a core technology of civilization itself. Flax for linen, wool from sheep, eventually cotton and silk. And with textiles came something new, the wardrobe, clothing built for different purposes. A heavy cloak for winter, a light wrap for summer, specific garments for ritual, for work, for mourning. Long before any industrial revolution, textiles were one of the biggest economic forces in the ancient world. Entire trade routes were built on it, empires were financed by it, wars were fought over silk alone. All of it starting from a cold, mostly naked ancestor with clever hands and a sliver of bone. So why did ancient humans actually start wearing clothes? The honest answer is for all the reasons, layered on top of each other. It probably started as basic protection, a barrier against thorns and sun and biting things. It became social signaling almost immediately, a way of saying something about who you are. It became a matter of survival when the climate turned hostile and the population nearly vanished. And it became an art form, an industry, a language, as human culture grew more complex. The strange thing is not that we started wearing clothes. Given who we are, social, symbolic, status-obsessed, and freezing half the time, it was probably inevitable. You are doing it again right now. Whatever you are wearing today, you made choices about it, conscious ones and unconscious ones. And those choices say something about how you feel, what group you belong to, who you want the world to see. You are doing exactly what that person on the African savanna was doing, wrapped in ochre-stained hide by the fire. 150,000 years of human history, and what connects you to them without a single break is simple. You got dressed this morning. That is not a small thing, that is the whole thing. So about that bug. It is easy to hear that a parasite lives on your clothes and feel a small wave of disgust. But flip it around for a second. That tiny, unwanted creature is also, quietly, the most loyal historian your species has ever had. It moved in the moment you got dressed, and it never once stopped keeping the record. It is proof that somewhere, tens of thousands of years ago, someone wrapped a hide around themselves for the very first time. And that small, ordinary act made it all the way down to you. Through near extinction, through ice ages, through needles carved from bird bone. Through every single morning since, someone somewhere has gotten dressed and without quite meaning to, said something about who they are. Clothing was never just fabric. It was humanity's very first language of identity, older than writing, older almost than words. And every single day, you still speak it. So the next time you get dressed, you are not just staying warm. You are doing the oldest human thing there is, telling the world quietly who you are.